The morning sun cast long shadows across the naval base at Virginia Beach, but inside the briefing room, the atmosphere was thick with tension and skepticism. Alex Hayes stepped through the doors, her uniform immaculate, polished boots clicking against the linoleum floor. She paused for a heartbeat, scanning the room full of young men, seasoned SEALs, and a handful of officers who had heard rumors of her rise but had yet to witness her command. The air was heavy with whispers, some curious, some dismissive, some openly mocking. A woman leading SEALs? Someone muttered under his breath. Another scoffed. What does she know about combat? Alex ignored them. She had faced doubt her entire life. She had trained harder than most men twice her size, pushed her body to limits that would make seasoned soldiers gasp, and endured moments of humiliation and exhaustion that would have broken anyone else. Today, she wasn't here to convince them with words. She was here to demonstrate command through presence, confidence, and unwavering focus. She walked to the front of the room, her posture straight, her expression calm but unyielding. The whispers grew louder for a moment, then faltered as she opened her mouth. "I'm Commander Alexandra Hayes," she began, her voice steady, carrying across the room. "I will be your commanding officer for this deployment. You will follow my orders, and I will expect nothing less than your full commitment and professionalism." A hush fell over the room. The murmurs died down, replaced by the faint sounds of pens scratching notes, chairs shifting, and a few held breaths. No one moved, yet everyone felt the presence of someone who demanded attention, not through bluster or ego, but simply through her authority and resolve. Lieutenant Cooper, an experienced SEAL with 10 years in special operations, leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. His gaze was skeptical, analytical. "A woman?" he muttered to the man beside him, though it was loud enough for Alex to hear. "I mean, no offense, but this is the first time I've seen this." His words trailed off, uncertain. Alex's eyes flicked toward him, unflinching. She said nothing. She didn't need to. Every inch of her body language, from the square of her shoulders to the controlled cadence of her breathing, broadcast a silent message. Doubt was irrelevant here. Ability, discipline, and determination were all that mattered. The room was full of men who had faced countless challenges in the field. They had stormed beaches, scaled cliffs, navigated hostile territory, and endured months of grueling training. And yet, some of them questioned her authority before she even spoke another word. Alex had learned long ago that respect wasn't given. It was earned, sometimes the hard way. She began the briefing, outlining the upcoming mission with precision. Every movement, every gesture, every word was calculated to demonstrate competence. She wasn't lecturing. She was coordinating. She wasn't asserting superiority. She was guiding. And gradually, the skepticism began to waver. Private Thompson, a young recruit barely out of basic training, whispered to the soldier beside him, "She actually knows her stuff. Look at that." The other nodded, eyes wide with surprise. Even among the seasoned operators, there was a grudging acknowledgement that this was no ordinary CO. Alex paused to explain a tactical maneuver, drawing diagrams on the whiteboard. She noticed Cooper's eyes narrowing, critical, analyzing every line she drew, every command she issued. Most men would have seen this as a challenge, a test of authority, perhaps even a threat. Alex welcomed it. She had spent her entire career proving herself in the face of doubt. Let him watch, let him judge. Action spoke louder than skepticism ever could. Her mind flashed briefly to her past. She remembered the first time she had stepped into SEAL training, a young woman with fire in her eyes and nerves coiled like steel springs. The instructors had looked at her with disbelief. "You won't last a week," one had said. Another had added, "You'll be gone by the first obstacle course." Each word, each dismissive glance, had fueled her determination. She had survived Bud S., endured endless cold water swims, impossible obstacle courses, and the mental torture of constant evaluation. She had not only survived, but thrived. Today was just another battlefield. Only this time, the enemies were doubt and prejudice. The briefing continued, and Alex's voice remained calm, authoritative, unwavering. She described the mission in detail, laying out contingencies, assigning roles, emphasizing communication and teamwork. Every sentence was a demonstration of her knowledge and command. By the time she concluded, the room had fallen completely silent. The mocking laughter and whispered doubts were gone, replaced by something heavier, curiosity, respect, and a dawning realization that she was not someone to underestimate. Cooper leaned forward, studying her intently. There was a flicker of grudging respect in his eyes, though he would never admit it aloud. For the first time, he realized that commanding SEALs was not about muscle or gender. It was about clarity, courage, and composure under pressure, qualities Alex possessed in abundance. The room emptied slowly, each man processing the encounter in his own way. Some were inspired, others cautious, a few still skeptical, but all had felt the undeniable presence of leadership. Alex remained behind, gathering her notes, reflecting silently on the subtle shift she had orchestrated. Leadership was a silent art, she reminded herself, a matter of presence and principle rather than ego or intimidation. As she stepped outside, the warm sunlight striking her face, she allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Today had been the first round in a battle that would last her entire career, proving that leadership was not defined by gender, but by capability, courage, and integrity. The journey ahead would be filled with challenges, skepticism, and moments of trial. But if today was any indication, Commander Alexandra Hayes was more than ready to face them all. Somewhere in the distance, a young recruit watched her pass, admiration flickering in his eyes. Others followed in silence, their minds quietly recalibrating assumptions. And in that quiet recalibration, Alex Hayes had already begun changing the culture, one command, one action, one unshakable step at a time. The war for respect was just beginning, but Commander Hayes had already taken the first decisive victory. Alexandra Hayes had not always commanded rooms with such quiet authority. Born and raised in a small Colorado town, she had grown up surrounded by mountains, rivers, and the kind of expansive skies that made ambition feel boundless, yet she also knew the weight of reality. Her father, a firefighter, was a man of iron discipline and quiet heroism, often returning from blazes exhausted, soot covering his hands and face. Her mother, a nurse, balanced compassion with resilience, working long hours to care for strangers while instilling a moral compass in her children. From them, Alex had inherited both courage and empathy, a combination that would one day shape her into a leader. From the beginning, Alex was relentless. While other children played, she tested her endurance, climbing cliffs, running long distances, and pushing herself physically in ways that surprised even her parents. They encouraged her determination, but warned her of the limits society often placed on women. "You can do anything, Alex," her mother would say, "but others will try to tell you otherwise." Her father would add with a sly smile, "Then show them. Don't argue, just prove them wrong." She carried those lessons with her like a shield. At the Naval Academy, Alex encountered her first real taste of organized skepticism. The hallways were filled with cadets, mostly men, some of whom saw her presence as a challenge to tradition. Her instructors were rigorous, sometimes harsh, testing her intellect, physical endurance, and tactical aptitude at every turn. Every exercise felt like a proving ground, every comment a potential slight. Some whispered doubts behind her back. "She's not strong enough," or "She cracked before summer." Alex ignored them. She knew her path would be difficult, but she also knew she could endure more than anyone expected. It was during her first SEAL pre-training that she discovered the true measure of her resolve. BUD-S, Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL Training, was infamous for pushing candidates to the brink of human endurance. Alex had heard the stories of men collapsing, giving up, and walking away broken. The early mornings were bitterly cold, the runs exhausting, the water frigid and unrelenting. Yet for Alex, there was something exhilarating about each challenge, a quiet promise that she could, and would, endure more than anyone expected. The first major test came during Hell Week, a grueling stretch where candidates were pushed to extremes with little rest, constant physical exertion, and psychological strain. Alex's body screamed in protest as she navigated obstacle courses, hauled logs through mud, and swam in ice-cold waters for hours on end. Every step was agony, every breath a battle, but she refused to quit. She remembered her brother, a Marine who had died in Afghanistan. His voice echoed in her mind, "Lead with courage, not ego." For him, for herself, she pressed forward. Some instructors doubted she could make it. One gruff, veteran SEAL trainer looked her in the eye during a particularly punishing swim drill and said, "You're done. You can't keep up." Alex's jaw tightened. She ignored the sting of insult and continued, stroke after stroke, until she reached the finish. Exhaustion threatened to drag her under, but determination kept her afloat. By the end of Hell Week, she was one of only a few remaining candidates. The physical tests were brutal, but the psychological trials were equally challenging. The whispers of doubt, the stares of disbelief, and the unspoken question, can she really be a SEAL? Had to be endured and ignored. Over the next months, Alex faced additional trials. Combat diving exercises tested her ability to operate underwater with precision. Land navigation exercises in dense forests forced her to rely on instincts, maps, and compass alone. Every drill, every assignment, every sleepless night was a lesson in resilience, patience, and leadership. Even when her body ached, when her fingers were raw, and her muscles screamed in protest, she never allowed herself to falter. She learned that endurance was not simply physical. It was mental and emotional. Beyond the physical tests, Alex had to confront prejudice. Many male candidates assumed she would fail, or that she needed special treatment. Some instructors were dismissive. "You won't make it through the water obstacle," one said, doubt etched across his face. Alex simply focused on the task, finishing faster than half the men in the group. The small victories began to accumulate, and though she rarely celebrated, she began to feel a quiet satisfaction with each step forward. Respect had to be earned, sometimes silently, sometimes with results that left no room for argument. Her mentors, those who recognized her potential, offered guidance and encouragement. One retired SEAL officer, noting her perseverance, told her, "You're not just surviving, you're redefining what it means to endure. Keep going, Hayes. You've got what it takes." Those words, though rare, became a source of strength. She realized that leadership was as much about persistence and integrity as it was about skill. To lead men who had always assumed superiority required an unshakable inner core. Alongside the physical and psychological training, Alex cultivated her strategic mind. She studied naval tactics, mission planning, and the history of special operations. Every historical account, every tactical exercise, every debrief of past missions served as preparation. By the time she earned her SEAL designation, she was not just a survivor. She was a strategist, a leader, and a warrior, forged in both body and mind. Her journey was not without personal cost. Relationships were strained, moments of doubt crept in, and there were nights when exhaustion brought her to tears in the darkness. But each setback reinforced her resolve. She learned to channel pain into strength, disappointment into determination, and skepticism into motivation. By the time she walked out of the training compound with her sealed pin gleaming on her uniform, she carried more than a badge. She carried proof that perseverance, courage, and unwavering focus could overcome the harshest trials. It was this history that informed her approach to command. Every whisper of doubt she now faced, from Lieutenant Cooper or from skeptical recruits, was a mere echo of the challenges she had already survived. Every question about her capability, every glance that suggested she didn't belong, was irrelevant. Her record spoke louder than their assumptions. She had been forged in the most demanding crucible the Navy offered. She had earned her place, and now she would command with the same discipline, resilience, and strategic precision that had carried her through the toughest moments of her life. Even in quiet moments, Alex reflected on the sacrifices she had made. The memory of her brother, the rigorous months of training, the physical pain, the mental stress, all of it contributed to the leader she had become. She had learned that respect was not granted. It had to be earned, sometimes through excellence, sometimes through quiet persistence, sometimes through acts of courage that left no room for doubt. As she prepared for her first deployment as a commanding officer, Alex understood that skepticism would follow her. Some would doubt her abilities because she was a woman. Others would doubt because they had not yet seen the depth of her experience. And still others would doubt because the idea of a woman commanding a SEAL team challenged the culture itself. But she welcomed the challenge. She knew the truth. Her leadership, skill, and courage were indisputable, and the world would recognize it in time. Her story was only beginning. Today, she would face the first wave of doubt. Tomorrow, the challenges would intensify. But Alex Hayes, shaped by every hardship and every triumph, was ready. She carried the lessons of her past like armor, and the determination to command respect like a sword. The journey from Colorado mountains to SEAL training had been brutal, but it had been worth every ounce of struggle. Now, as a commander, she would prove that leadership was earned through action, integrity, and courage, and nothing, not even widespread doubt, could diminish her resolve. Alexandra Hayes stepped onto the deck of the SEAL team's ship, the salty wind whipping her hair across her face, carrying with it the scent of diesel, sea, and anticipation. She had faced countless challenges in her life, but this was different. This was her first deployment as a commanding officer, and unlike grueling training exercises or unforgiving instructors, the opposition here was subtle, internal, and complex. It was not the enemy she would fight on foreign soil, but skepticism, bias, and resistance from within her own team. The briefing room was tense. Lieutenant Cooper sat with his arms crossed, scanning the room as if evaluating her as much as the mission itself. His expression was unreadable, but carried a quiet edge of doubt. Several of the operators whispered among themselves, some glancing at Alex with a mixture of curiosity, suspicion, and quiet disbelief. She was aware of the challenge that lay ahead, to lead not just a team, but a team that had known only men in command for decades. Alex opened the mission folder with a calm, deliberate motion. She placed it on the table, the sound of its cover snapping into place, breaking the murmur of whispers. The operation was classified. An anti-piracy mission near the Horn of Africa, one that required precision, coordination, and absolute trust among her team. As she began the briefing, she maintained steady eye contact with each operator, her voice calm but authoritative. We will be deploying at 0400 hours. Our objective is to intercept and neutralize the pirate cell that has been hijacking commercial vessels in the region. Each team member will have specific roles assigned. Our success depends on coordination and discipline. Questions are welcome. A pause. Cooper leaned forward, his face an unreadable mask, and spoke first. Respectfully, Commander, perhaps this mission requires experience, he said slowly, carefully measuring his words. There was a subtle challenge embedded in the statement, a test of authority and composure. Other operators tensed slightly, glancing between him and Alex, waiting for her response. Alex's gaze settled on him evenly, unwavering. Experience isn't the same as leadership, Lieutenant. I've earned both, she replied, her tone steady, without anger, without defensiveness. Her words were precise and deliberate, asserting authority not through force, but through confidence. A ripple of tension moved across the room. Some men shifted in their seats. Some frowned, some tightened their grips on their gear. She knew the battle for trust had just begun. Cooper's lips pressed into a thin line, a mix of reluctant respect and stubborn doubt. The team's reaction was mixed. Some leaned in, eager to see how she would handle this subtle resistance. Others exchanged quiet glances, silently calculating whether she was up to the task. Alex anticipated this. Leadership, she had learned, was never about immediate approval. It was about demonstrating competence, consistency, and courage until respect became inevitable. She continued the briefing, breaking down the operation into minute details. Each tactical maneuver, extraction protocol, and contingency plan was outlined clearly, with redundancies for unforeseen circumstances. She explained her reasoning for every decision, ensuring that the team understood not just the what, but the why. Her clarity and thoroughness began to soften some of the skepticism in the room. A few operators began nodding, taking notes, and mentally aligning with her plan. After the briefing, Alex gathered the team for practical preparation. She oversaw the loading of gear, checked weapons, and coordinated communication protocols. Every interaction was an opportunity to demonstrate her competence. When Cooper attempted to question her strategy again, Alex calmly addressed his concerns, providing tactical reasoning and examples from prior missions and training exercises. He didn't argue further, though the flicker of doubt in his eyes remained. The day wore on with grueling preparation drills. Alex watched her team closely, noting strengths, weaknesses, and dynamics. Some operators were quick to adapt. Others hesitated, unconsciously testing her patience and authority. She moved among them, offering guidance, correcting mistakes, and quietly observing. Her presence was commanding, but not overbearing. She wasn't there to intimidate. She was there to lead, and leadership meant earning trust through action and integrity. By evening, exhaustion had begun to creep in. Alex gathered the team in a circle, emphasizing cohesion, communication, and trust. Tomorrow, we execute as one unit, she said. Success depends on every individual knowing their role, supporting each other, and trusting that each decision is made with your safety and mission success in mind. Doubt has no place in our team, only precision, discipline, and courage. Her words resonated, not as threats, but as a reminder of shared responsibility and mutual accountability. Cooper stayed silent, but a subtle shift had begun. He watched Alex carefully, no longer with overt skepticism, but with measured attention. Other operators, too, seemed to absorb her command in a new light, recognizing that her authority was grounded not in ego or bravado, but in experience, intelligence, and unwavering determination. Alex sensed the change, subtle yet significant. The first layer of resistance was beginning to crumble, though she knew there was much work ahead. That night, as the team prepared their equipment and final briefings, Alex walked alone on the deck, gazing at the endless expanse of the ocean. The moonlight reflected on the waves, silver streaks dancing across the dark water. She allowed herself a quiet moment of reflection. The battle she faced was not just against pirates or hostile threats overseas. It was also a battle against ingrained doubt and prejudice. Every step forward would require patience, resilience, and clarity. She drew strength from her past, the long nights of training, the countless challenges she had overcome, and the unwavering belief that her capability was her proof. In the quiet, she thought of her brother, a Marine who had given his life in service. His voice echoed in her mind, "Lead with courage, not ego." Those words had guided her through the hardest trials of Bud S, through the countless obstacles that tested her body and mind. Now they guided her in the subtle, complex battlefield of leadership, where authority had to be earned, skepticism overcome, and respect commanded without force. The next morning, dawn broke with a faint orange glow on the horizon. Alex gathered her team for final preparations. The air was tense, but charged with purpose. She could feel the shift in the room. Curiosity and tentative trust mingled with residual doubt. The mission ahead would be the true test, not of strategy alone, but of her ability to unite and lead a team that had once questioned her competence. As she gave the final orders, every operator listened intently, each one aware that this deployment would define their cohesion, their success, and their trust in their commander. Alex's eyes met Cooper's briefly. There was no defiance in his gaze now, only cautious acknowledgement. She allowed herself a small, almost imperceptible nod, understanding that leadership was a marathon, not a sprint. Respect had to be built through repeated action, decisions made under pressure, and the courage to act decisively in critical moments. The engines roared to life as the ship cut through the waves. Alex stood at the bridge, scanning the horizon with a calm intensity. Every decision she would make, every order she would give, would be measured, precise, and deliberate. She knew the team was watching, evaluating, and learning. Doubt would give way to respect, hesitation to confidence, and skepticism to trust. But it would take more than words. It would take action, courage, and the kind of leadership that could not be ignored. In the end, Alex Hayes knew that resistance from within was not a sign of failure, but an opportunity. Every challenge, every questioning glance, every whispered doubt was a chance to demonstrate her capability, her resilience, and her unwavering commitment to the mission and her team. The journey ahead would be dangerous, unpredictable, and demanding, but she was ready. And as the first rays of sunlight touched the deck, she felt the quiet surge of determination that had carried her through every obstacle in her life. Leadership was never given freely. It was earned, sometimes through trials by fire, sometimes through calm decisiveness, and always through courage. Alex Hayes was prepared to earn it, again and again, until every doubt had been silenced by the undeniable proof of her command. The journey from skepticism to respect had begun. The night was darker than usual as the SEAL team approached the Somali coastline. The waves slapped violently against the hull of the small craft, tossing them as if the ocean itself sought to test their resolve. Alexandra Hayes stood at the helm, her eyes scanning the horizon through night vision optics, every muscle tense yet controlled. The team behind her moved with quiet efficiency, but she could sense the underlying tension. This was the first real test, not drills, not simulations, not theoretical planning, but a live operation where the stakes were life and death. The mission was simple in theory: intercept and rescue hostages from a pirate-controlled vessel before dawn. In reality, it was a maze of variables, unpredictable weather, hostile adversaries, and a thin margin between success and catastrophe. The briefing from the previous day played in Alex's mind: the importance of coordination, maintaining stealth, and anticipating every move. She had planned meticulously, but now every plan would be tested in the chaotic reality of the field. Lieutenant Cooper, still cautious but attentive, checked his gear and glanced at her, eyes flickering with tentative respect. He had seen her competence in planning, but action was a different trial. Alex met his gaze briefly. Trust your training. Trust the team. she whispered, though loud enough for him to hear. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Leadership, she knew, was not about commanding with force alone. It was about inspiring confidence when fear threatened to take hold. As the SEALs approached the pirate vessel under the cloak of darkness, Alex issued precise instructions. Each operator knew their role: boarding points, cover positions, extraction routes. The plan required synchronization, and her calm, deliberate voice kept the team aligned. Every order was measured, no hesitation, no uncertainty, a stark contrast to the churning sea and the uncertainty ahead. Suddenly, the first obstacle presented itself. One of the boarding crafts was caught in a sudden swell, nearly capsizing. Panic flared briefly among the younger operators, but Alex's steady command cut through it. Stabilize. Adjust ballast. Cooper, secure the rear hatch. Her actions were swift, methodical, and the situation was brought under control in moments. She moved through the chaos with the precision of someone who had lived through countless challenges, both in training and in life. The boarding team approached the pirate vessel, and Alex's heart rate surged, not with fear, but with a sharp edge of focus. Every movement was critical. One misstep could mean the loss of hostages, casualties among her team, or failure of the mission. She led from the front, a visible presence that reminded the operators that their commander was willing to face the same risks they did. Inside the pirate ship, the team encountered armed resistance immediately. The dim corridors echoed with shouts, gunfire, and the heavy clanging of metal. Alex's voice cut through the noise with clear, tactical commands. Team Alpha, flank left. Bravo, cover the hatch. Maintain perimeter. Her words were precise, her timing flawless. Even Cooper found himself impressed, silently noting how she maneuvered the team with authority, making critical decisions under pressure without hesitation. Then, the crisis struck. One of the operators, a young recruit, slipped during the engagement and was pinned by a swinging cargo container. The pirates advanced, weapons raised, and the situation teetered on the brink of disaster. Alex didn't pause. She directed Cooper and another SEAL to secure the recruit while she engaged the immediate threat, moving with agility and precision that belied her physical exhaustion. She neutralized the nearest opponent, cleared a path, and ensured the hostage was unharmed. The intensity of the moment crystallized her leadership. Action, courage, and strategy converged seamlessly. Once the immediate threat was neutralized, Alex coordinated the extraction. She ensured that every operator was accounted for, that the hostages were secure, and that the team moved as a single, unified unit toward safety. The waves outside continued to lash against the vessel, the night pressing down with icy intensity, but Alex's calm presence guided her team through chaos with unwavering clarity. Back on the transport craft, the adrenaline still coursing through their veins, Cooper finally spoke, his voice low and measured. Commander, that was impressive. You saved the hostage and kept the team intact. I misjudged you? Alex gave a brief nod, acknowledging his words but not allowing them to distract her. Leadership, she knew, was not about accolades or validation. It was about ensuring mission success and safeguarding her team. The rest of the night was spent securing the hostages and returning to base. Every operator moved with a renewed sense of cohesion, subtly shifting their perception of their commander. Respect, once hesitant, was beginning to solidify through demonstrated competence under life-threatening conditions. Alex's calm decisiveness had transformed skepticism into cautious trust. Even during the return voyage, Alex remained vigilant, monitoring the team, checking their gear, and reviewing mission outcomes in her mind. Every detail mattered. One misstep in her calculations could have led to catastrophe. Yet, despite the tension and the danger, she maintained her composure, an anchor in a storm of uncertainty. Later, in the quiet of the ship's med bay, Alex allowed herself a brief reflection. The first test had been grueling, but it had also been clarifying. She had proven to herself that she could lead under pressure, that her decisions were sound, and that her team could respond effectively under her command. More importantly, she had begun to earn the respect of those who had once doubted her, a crucial step in unifying a team that would rely on each other for life and death in the missions to come. As the sun rose over the horizon, casting golden light across the deck, Alex looked at her team. Faces once clouded with doubt now carried the faint glint of trust and tentative admiration. She knew the journey toward complete cohesion was far from over. Resistance would surface again, challenges would escalate, and the true measure of leadership was yet to be fully tested. But today, she had taken a decisive step forward, one that would resonate throughout her career and cement her role as a capable, fearless commander. By the time they docked at the base, word of the mission's success had begun to circulate. Briefings with higher command acknowledged the efficiency and courage of the team under her guidance. Yet Alex remained humble. Victory was never about recognition. It was about ensuring that her men returned safely and that the mission objectives were met with precision. That night, as the team celebrated quietly, Cooper approached her again. "Commander Hayes, I see now why you're here. You didn't just give orders. You led us." Alex allowed herself a faint smile. It wasn't about proving herself to him or the others. It was about reinforcing the principles she had carried since training. Leadership is demonstrated through action, courage, and unwavering integrity. For Alex Hayes, the first test had been more than a mission. It had been a crucible, a proving ground for both strategy and character. She had led her team through uncertainty, danger, and skepticism, emerging with not only a successful operation, but a foundation of respect and trust. The path ahead would be even more perilous, the missions more complex, the stakes higher. But she had proven to herself and to those around her that she could rise to meet any challenge, no matter how daunting. As she gazed at the horizon once more, the sun glinting off the calm waters now that the storm had passed, Alexandra Hayes felt a quiet surge of determination. The first mission was behind her, but countless challenges awaited. And she was ready, more prepared than ever to lead, to protect, and to command with the unyielding strength that had carried her this far. The first test had been survived. The journey to earning unwavering trust and respect was just beginning. The sun had barely risen over the horizon when Alexandra Hayes stood on the deck, scanning the calm waters. The mission in Somalia had been successful, but the adrenaline that surged through her veins the night before hadn't subsided. She knew that command was not measured by victories alone, but by the burden one bore for every decision, every life entrusted to them, and every consequence of action or inaction. Leadership, she realized, was far heavier than any pack or weapon she had ever carried. The med bay was quiet except for the rhythmic beeping of monitors. One of her operators, a young recruit named Daniels, lay unconscious after a minor injury sustained during the extraction. Though the wound was not fatal, it weighed heavily on Alex. Each decision she made had implications. Even small oversights could become catastrophic. She felt a gnawing sense of responsibility that she could not shake. The lives of these men, her men, were intertwined with every tactical choice she made. As she reviewed mission logs and debrief notes, the pressure of command began to settle over her like a tangible weight. Orders from higher command demanded that the team redeploy immediately to intercept another suspected pirate cell. Time was critical, and delays were unacceptable. Her instincts screamed caution. Her duties screamed compliance. The conflict was immediate and painful. Obey orders to the letter and risk the well-being of an exhausted team, or push back and risk political scrutiny and career consequences. Alex stepped onto the ship's deck, the morning wind cold against her face. The waves were deceptively calm, but she knew the real battles lay ahead, not in the ocean, but in the decisions she would make as a commander. She gathered her team for a quick meeting. Cooper, now quiet and attentive, observed her every word. The men's eyes, once filled with skepticism, now held the faint glimmer of trust, tentative, yes, but real. "We have a second mission," she began, voice steady, calm, yet carrying the gravity of responsibility. "Orders are to intercept a pirate cell operating along the northern coastline. We will proceed, but not recklessly. Everyone's safety remains our priority. We will not compromise anyone for speed. Are we clear?" Her gaze swept the room. Nods met her eyes. Some operators whispered quiet affirmations. Even Cooper, stoic as ever, inclined his head in acknowledgement. A moral dilemma pressed against her. She knew that higher command expected rapid results, but her team had endured nearly 24 hours of relentless action. Fatigue would impair judgment, slow reflexes, and risk lives. Her duty was not just to accomplish the mission, but to protect those under her command. Leadership was never about being liked. It was about being responsible for lives that were not her own and making choices that could haunt her conscience. Later, as the team prepared gear and double-checked communications, Alex allowed herself a brief moment alone. She retrieved her brother's dog tags from her pocket, the metal worn and familiar. His voice echoed in her mind. Lead with courage, not ego. She had survived countless challenges because of that principle. Now, in the quiet before another storm, it reminded her that courage was also knowing when to act and when to hold back. Decisions were rarely simple. Moral clarity was rare in moments of chaos. The next operation began under the oppressive heat of midday. The waves rocked the craft as the team approached the target area. Alex's eyes scanned the horizon, her mind calculating every variable. She issued orders with deliberate clarity. Bravo team, secure perimeter. Alpha team, approach from starboard flank. Maintain line of sight with hostages at all times. Any deviation, report immediately. The calmness of her voice contrasted sharply with the danger surrounding them. Despite meticulous planning, chaos struck quickly. A sudden skirmish erupted when pirates noticed the team's approach, earlier than anticipated. Bullets ricocheted off metal, and smoke from the vessel's engines filled the air. One of her SEALs was caught off guard and fell near a hatch, injured. Cooper, reacting instinctively, called out for support. Alex made the split-second decision to lead a small unit into the thick of the skirmish to retrieve the injured operator. Every step she took was calculated, every action deliberate, balancing aggression with protection. The firefight was intense, but her presence steadied the team. Operators who had once doubted her now moved in precise synchronization, executing maneuvers she had drilled relentlessly during preparation. The chaos of combat tested their trust in her as a commander, and they rose to the challenge. Alex's decisions, grounded in both strategy and instinct, allowed them to secure the hostages and extract the team without further casualties. Back aboard the ship, the aftermath weighed heavily on her. The med bay was filled with the sounds of tending to wounds and stabilizing injured personnel. She walked among her men, checking on each one, silently absorbing the impact of her decisions. Every action had consequences, and the burden of responsibility sat squarely on her shoulders. Cooper approached her quietly, a rare softness in his eyes. "You handled that well," he said. "I see why you're our commander. Not just because of skill, but because you care." Alex nodded, acknowledging the praise without letting it distract her. Leadership was not about recognition. It was about accountability. She spent the remainder of the evening reviewing mission logs, evaluating performance, and preparing for potential follow-up operations. Each decision, she realized, carried a weight far beyond her own ambition. It was the lives, safety, and morale of her team that rested in her hands. As the night deepened, she found a quiet corner of the ship to reflect. The psychological burden of command was unlike any physical trial she had faced. In training, failure was measured in objective outcomes, passing or failing, completing drills or dropping out. In the field, failure meant lives at risk, consequences that could linger for years. She understood now that the essence of leadership was balancing duty, morality, and human vulnerability under extreme pressure. Her thoughts drifted briefly to her brother again, the Marine who had sacrificed his life in service. His words, "Lead with courage, not ego," felt sharper now than ever. Courage was not only facing danger head-on. It was making decisions that could be questioned, weighed, and second-guessed, and still standing by them when they were the right choice. Command carried no room for hesitation when stakes were this high. By dawn, the team rested, though none fully relaxed. Alex patrolled the deck, watching her men sleep in brief, fragmented shifts. The calm morning air was deceptive. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new operations, and new decisions that could test her leadership again. Yet, despite fatigue, fear, and relentless pressure, she felt a quiet affirmation. She could bear this weight. She could carry the burden of command without losing herself or her team. The weight of command was heavy, but Alexandra Hayes had proven to herself and to her team that responsibility could be met with integrity, courage, and unwavering focus. Leadership was not a title. It was a living, breathing commitment to every life entrusted to her. And in that commitment, she found strength. The sun rose higher, casting golden light across the deck, and Alexandra Hayes allowed herself a rare, brief smile. The first mission had been a crucible, the second a test of endurance and morality. She had faced doubt, chaos, and risk, and emerged resolute. The journey ahead promised greater trials, but she was prepared. Leadership, she realized, was as much about the decisions made in quiet reflection as it was about bold action under fire. For Alexandra Hayes, the weight of command was not a burden to fear. It was the measure of her purpose, the proving ground of her courage, and the path to earning lasting respect. The battles ahead would test every facet of her skill, every ounce of her resolve, and every measure of her humanity. And she would meet them all, head-on, with clarity, precision, and unwavering commitment. The night sky over Yemen was a blanket of inky darkness, pierced only by the pale glimmer of distant stars. The SEAL team's helicopters hovered silently above the desert terrain, rotors barely audible over the tense breathing of the men beneath. Alexandra Hayes tightened her grip on the controls of the comms, scanning the terrain with focused intensity. Intelligence reports had indicated a weapons cache and terrorist leadership cell embedded within a small, fortified compound. What should have been a calculated strike was about to turn into a battlefield that would test everything she had learned. Her team was silent, each operator mentally preparing for the extraction operation. Cooper's eyes, alert and calculating, flicked toward her with a silent question. The same question every soldier asks before a mission of this magnitude. Will our leader get us through this alive? Alex met his gaze with unwavering focus. Leadership, she knew, was not about inspiring with words alone, but by demonstrating composure and courage when chaos threatened to engulf everyone. The operation began smoothly. The team moved in with practiced precision, navigating the sand dunes under the cover of darkness, relying on night vision optics and silent communication. Every operator performed as drilled, every step coordinated. For a moment, Alex allowed herself a flicker of relief. Months of planning, training, and preparation were paying off. But war, she had learned, was never predictable. Suddenly, an alarm triggered within the compound. A watchtower light swept the desert, catching one of her operators exposed. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions, forcing the team to scatter. Chaos descended. Shouts and explosions filled the air, punctuated by the sharp crack of gunfire and the whistle of incoming rounds. Alex's heart pounded, but her mind remained razor-sharp. This was the crucible every leader feared, a moment when training, instinct, and courage collide under life-threatening conditions. Cooper was caught off guard, pinned behind a dune by a sudden hail of bullets. A younger SEAL beside him froze, indecision flashing in his eyes. Alex's voice cut across the comms, firm and precise. "Move! Cover Alpha! Cooper, get down and return fire!" Her team responded instantly, following her commands as if every word carried the weight of certainty. Yet even as the men executed orders, Alex recognized the growing danger. The team was outnumbered, and the tide of fire threatened to overwhelm them. Without hesitation, Alex acted. She led a small unit into the open, drawing enemy fire strategically to allow Cooper and the others to retreat to cover. Bullets ricocheted around her as she advanced, calculating every movement to maximize safety while maintaining tactical advantage. Her mind operated on split-second decisions, cover routes, angles of fire, and extraction points all running simultaneously in a precise mental map. Action was no longer a choice. It was survival. Amid the firefight, one of the newer operators tripped, sliding toward the line of fire. Alex didn't pause. She surged forward, pulling him back into cover while neutralizing threats in their immediate vicinity. The desert sand was gritty and stained with sweat and blood, yet she moved with controlled precision. Every action demonstrated not only courage, but also the unwavering commitment to her team's safety. This was the essence of leadership she had internalized over years of grueling training and deployments. Protect your team, make decisive moves, and never falter under pressure. The firefight raged for what felt like an eternity, though it was only minutes. Explosions shook the ground, and the screams of combat echoed across the dunes. Alex coordinated air support, marked extraction points, and ensured her team maintained cohesion. Each order was executed with clarity, each movement calculated to minimize casualties. For the first time, even the most skeptical operators witnessed her command in its full, unflinching reality. She led not from a distance, but alongside them in danger, sharing the same risk and the same stakes. Eventually, the team regrouped at a pre-designated cover point, wounded but alive. Cooper, breathing heavily, caught Alex's eye. There was no defiance in his expression now, only recognition of the courage and precision she had displayed under extreme duress. He gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Respect, once hesitant, was now solidified through experience. But the night was not yet over. One of the operators had been hit by shrapnel, his condition critical. Alex made a split-second decision: stay and secure the injured man, or continue the mission and risk greater casualties. She chose both. With the support of her team, she coordinated a field stabilization while continuing to neutralize immediate threats. Every second counted, every movement was fraught with danger, yet her composure remained absolute. The extraction helicopter arrived moments later, guided precisely by Alex's coordination. Every operator boarded with practiced efficiency, carrying the wounded with care. Bullets still peppered the desert around them, but Alex maintained control, ensuring the team evacuated in an orderly, strategic manner. The compound was left secured for follow-up, hostiles neutralized, and the team intact. Back aboard the transport, the adrenaline slowly ebbed, replaced by a heavy exhaustion. Operators leaned against each other, silent and fatigued, yet their eyes reflected an undeniable shift. Cooper approached her again, this time with no hesitation. "Commander, I don't know how to put it," he said, voice rough with emotion. "I was wrong. You led us through hell and kept us alive. I see now what real leadership looks like. Alex allowed herself a faint, controlled smile. Leadership, she reflected, was never about proving someone wrong. It was about guiding, protecting, and inspiring confidence under the most extreme conditions. Tonight, every doubt that had lingered in the minds of her team had been confronted and quietly shattered by action. She hadn't needed words, just presence, clarity, and courage. As the first hints of dawn crept over the horizon, Alex walked through the med bay, checking on every wounded operator personally. Her hands were steady, her demeanor calm, but inside she felt the weight of the night's events pressing heavily. Each decision she had made had consequences, some life-saving, some agonizing. The burden of command was a relentless companion, and she carried it silently, without complaint. Later, in the quiet of her quarters, Alex allowed herself a moment alone. The events of the night replayed in her mind in vivid detail. The chaos, the fear, the split-second decisions, and the triumphs. She traced her brother's dog tags absent-mindedly, drawing strength from his memory. Lead with courage, not ego. Those words had guided her through the fire tonight, just as they had through every trial in her life. Alex knew that breaking point was not just a moment in battle, but a culmination of experience, fear, and responsibility. Tonight, she had reached it, faced it, and emerged resolute. She had not only led her team through extreme danger, but she had earned the unshakable trust of those who had once doubted her. Courage was no longer theoretical. It had been proven in the heat of conflict. The team's dynamics had shifted irrevocably. Operators who had questioned her authority now looked to her with respect, admiration, and quiet acknowledgement of her skill and bravery. Cooper, once resistant, now moved in sync with her commands, a subtle but unmistakable affirmation that her leadership was recognized and valued. Alex Hayes had survived the breaking point, but she knew the journey was far from over. The missions ahead would test her further, morally, strategically, and physically. Yet she faced the future with unwavering confidence, fortified by the knowledge that courage, precision, and integrity could guide a team through even the most harrowing situations. As the sun rose fully, painting the desert in stark gold and shadows, Alexandra Hayes stood on the deck, scanning the horizon once more. The night's trials had left their mark, but she felt stronger, more determined, and ready to face whatever challenges awaited. She had led, protected, and inspired under fire. She had proven, in the most extreme circumstances, that leadership was not about rank alone, but about courage, clarity, and an unflinching commitment to those entrusted to one's command. Tonight had been a crucible, but the SEAL team emerged intact, bonded, and stronger for it. And Alexandra Hayes, the commander who had once faced doubt and mockery, now stood unshakable, a leader forged in fire, ready to face the battles yet to come. The sun rose over the calm waters of the Arabian Sea, casting golden light across the deck of the SEAL transport ship. After weeks of relentless missions, the team finally had a brief respite. For Alexandra Hayes, there was no time for celebration, only reflection. Every successful operation had carried a weight far beyond the satisfaction of accomplishment. She knew that the most important battles were not always fought in gunfire or explosions, but in the hearts and minds of those she led. Respect, trust, and cohesion could not be commanded. They had to be earned. The crew moved about the deck, checking gear, cleaning weapons, and performing maintenance with quiet efficiency. The atmosphere was subdued, yet different from the tension that had pervaded the team in past weeks. Eyes that had once narrowed in skepticism now followed her movements with a subtle attentiveness, a mix of admiration and recognition. Cooper, ever vigilant, walked alongside her, observing her interactions with the men. He no longer questioned her decisions. He now studied them, learning from her measured composure and tactical insight. Alex gathered the team in the main cabin for a debriefing. She spoke with deliberate calm, recounting every operation, every decision, and every outcome. But she did not dwell on her own role. Instead, she emphasized teamwork, communication, and the importance of each operator's contribution. Every success we've had, she said, voice steady, is the result of each one of you performing your role with discipline and precision. Leadership is not about rank, it's about responsibility, trust, and accountability. You've earned every success you see before you. The room was quiet, but the weight of her words was palpable. For the first time, some of the operators began to speak openly about their observations and experiences. One veteran, who had been notably critical of her early on, admitted, "Commander, I misjudged you. I didn't think you could handle the pressure like this. I see now that you've earned your place, not because of rank, but because of your actions." Alex listened, acknowledging the honesty with a nod, but offering no praise in return. Respect, she knew, could not be demanded, only reinforced through continued action. Cooper remained quiet until the debriefing concluded. Then he stepped forward, his expression more thoughtful than ever. "Commander Hayes," he said, "I've seen what you can do under fire. But it's not just your tactics that impress me. It's the way you carry the responsibility. You think about the team, not just the mission. That earns loyalty." Alex's gaze met his, steady and unwavering. She didn't respond with words. She simply acknowledged him with a nod. Leadership, she reminded herself, was shown through consistency, not through accolades or verbal recognition. Over the following days, the transformation in team culture became more apparent. Operators who had once been hesitant or dismissive now approached her for guidance, eager to align their actions with her expectations. Training drills became more collaborative, with less resistance and more initiative. The team began to anticipate her commands, understanding not just what needed to be done, but why it mattered. Her leadership had shifted the dynamic from skepticism to mutual respect, forging a cohesive unit capable of executing complex operations with precision and efficiency. Despite this growing cohesion, Alex remained vigilant. She knew that leadership was not static. It required constant engagement, reflection, and adaptation. She observed interactions quietly, noting subtle tensions or signs of fatigue, and adjusted her approach to maintain morale and focus. She walked among her team during drills, offering guidance where necessary, but never micromanaging. She understood that autonomy, when grounded in trust and training, was essential to operational excellence. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, Alex found herself on the deck alone. The water shimmered beneath her feet, calm yet unpredictable, much like the challenges she faced as a commander. She reflected on the journey that had brought her here from a small Colorado town to the crucible of Navy SEAL training, and now to the forefront of high-stakes operations in hostile territory. Every trial had tested her resilience, every doubt had demanded action, and every victory had reinforced the principles of leadership she held dear. Her thoughts drifted briefly to her family. Her parents' lessons of courage, empathy, and perseverance had been the foundation upon which she built her career. Her father's words, "Show them. Don't argue, just prove them wrong," resonated in her mind. She realized now that she had done more than prove others wrong. She had demonstrated that leadership required balance, strength, and unwavering integrity. It was a lesson she hoped her team would carry forward long after the missions ended. The transformation within the team was evident in subtle ways. Operators who had once been reluctant to speak up now offered suggestions during planning sessions. Younger recruits sought mentorship from seasoned members, guided by the standards Alex had set. The air of doubt that had once lingered like a shadow had dissipated, replaced by a quiet confidence rooted in mutual respect and shared experience. Alex watched this evolution with quiet satisfaction, understanding that her influence had begun to shape not only immediate outcomes, but the long-term culture of the team. During one particularly challenging drill, Alex observed Cooper giving precise instructions to a subgroup of operators. She allowed him the space to lead, intervening only when necessary. This delegation was a deliberate choice, reinforcing her trust in the team and demonstrating the principles of shared responsibility. Leadership, she knew, was not about maintaining control over every detail. It was about fostering competence, confidence, and initiative. Cooper's growth under her guidance was a testament to the effectiveness of this approach. Even as the team's cohesion strengthened, Alex remained mindful of the psychological toll of their work. Long deployments, high-stakes missions, and constant vigilance weighed heavily on every operator. She initiated regular check-ins, encouraging open communication about stress, fatigue, and concerns. By addressing these issues proactively, she not only safeguarded operational effectiveness, but also reinforced the bond of trust that had become the cornerstone of her leadership. The respect she had earned manifested in subtle gestures, a nod of acknowledgement during drills, silent cooperation during high-pressure exercises, and the quiet confidence with which operators executed complex maneuvers. It was a respect born of action, not words, a testament to the principle that leadership is demonstrated, not declared. By the end of the week, the transformation was undeniable. The team had evolved from a group of skilled but skeptical operators into a cohesive unit, capable of responding to crises with precision and confidence. Their trust in Alexandra Hayes was no longer tentative, was solid, earned through consistent demonstration of competence, courage, and integrity. Cooper, once the most vocal skeptic, now stood as a steadfast ally, a reflection of the shift in team culture she had cultivated. As night fell and the ship rocked gently on the waves, Alex stood on the deck once more, the cool wind brushing against her face. She felt the quiet satisfaction of a commander who had navigated both external threats and internal resistance. Leadership, she knew, was not a destination but a journey, a continuous effort to guide, protect, and inspire those entrusted to her care. The SEAL team, once fractured by doubt and skepticism, had become a unit defined by trust, respect, and shared purpose. Alexandra Hayes had not only proven her ability to lead under fire, but had transformed the culture of her team through example, consistency, and unwavering dedication. She understood that the true measure of leadership was not in individual accomplishments, but in the growth, confidence, and cohesion of the team as a whole. As she gazed at the horizon, the first stars beginning to shimmer against the darkening sky, Alexandra Hayes allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. The journey had been arduous, filled with doubt, danger, and relentless pressure. Yet she had emerged stronger, more capable, and fully aware of the profound responsibility she bore. The path ahead would bring new challenges, but she was ready. The team she had forged would follow her with trust and confidence, and together they would face whatever lay ahead. Leadership was no longer a question. It was a reality, lived through action, forged in fire, and reinforced by the respect of those she commanded. Alexandra Hayes had earned it silently, steadily, and unshakably. And in that earned respect lay the foundation for every mission yet to come. The sky was still dark when Alexandra Hayes assembled her team for their final operation in the region. Intelligence reports had revealed that a highly organized insurgent group had captured multiple hostages in a remote compound. The mission would require stealth, precision, and coordination, unlike any operation they had undertaken so far. Every detail mattered. Every decision could mean life or death. This was not just another mission. It was the ultimate test of her leadership and of the team she had spent months shaping. Alex stood at the front, her silhouette outlined by the dim light of approaching dawn. She addressed the team calmly, her voice carrying authority and assurance. "We faced impossible situations before," she said. "Today, we operate as one unit. Trust in your training, in your teammates, and in the plan. Every step you take matters. Stay focused, stay alert, and stay together." Cooper, who had once doubted her, now stood as her second in command, a model of professionalism and quiet trust. The other operators moved with focused intensity, the cohesion Alex had worked so hard to instill evident in their every motion. The operation demanded simultaneous action on multiple fronts, and she had confidence that her team could execute with precision. The insertion was tense, but successful. Using night vision and silence, the team approached the compound undetected. Alex coordinated each move via hand signals and radio whispers, ensuring minimal exposure. They breached the perimeter simultaneously, taking insurgents by surprise. The operation, planned to the finest detail, was unfolding as intended, but the unpredictability of combat soon tested them once again. A sudden alarm blared inside the compound. Hostile forces swarmed from multiple directions, and gunfire erupted. Alex remained composed, issuing rapid, precise commands. "Alpha Team, suppress fire. Bravo, flank left. Cooper, cover the rear exit." Her calm decisiveness reassured her operators as they executed maneuvers flawlessly. Every step reflected months of training and unwavering leadership. Midway through the engagement, Alex realized a hostage was trapped behind enemy lines. Without hesitation, she led a small extraction team into the heart of the firefight. Bullets tore through the walls around them, but she moved with calculated precision, shielding operators and civilians alike. Her presence galvanized the team, turning potential chaos into coordinated action. The hostage was secured, and every operator returned safely, a testament to her tactical skill and courage under fire. Afterward, as they exfiltrated under the cover of darkness, Alex noticed subtle shifts among her team members. The young recruits moved with quiet confidence. Veterans displayed trust without hesitation, and Cooper occasionally glanced at her, eyes reflecting acknowledgement and respect that went beyond words. Leadership had been tested under fire, and she had passed not just in theory, but in action. Upon returning to base, the debriefing room buzzed with quiet admiration. Commanding officers praised the operation's efficiency, noting the minimal casualties and precise execution. Yet Alex remained focused on the team. She highlighted each member's contributions, reinforcing cohesion and shared purpose. Her leadership had not only earned respect, it had transformed the unit into a tightly knit, capable team ready for any challenge. That night, alone on the deck, Alexandra reflected on her journey. From the early days of mockery and doubt to the crucible of combat and ultimate victory, she had proven that leadership was earned through courage, consistency, and unwavering integrity. She traced her brother's dog tags, a reminder of the principles that guided her. Lead with courage, protect those entrusted to you, and act decisively when stakes are highest. Alexandra Hayes had faced the impossible, carried the weight of command, and emerged as a Navy SEAL commander whose authority was unquestioned. Respect had been earned through action, trust had been forged in fire, and her team now operated as a cohesive unit under her guidance. Her legacy, though built in silence and resolve, was undeniable. As the first rays of sunrise touched the ocean, Alex looked at her team and smiled quietly. The journey had been arduous, filled with doubt, danger, and relentless challenges. But they had triumphed not because of one person, but because they had become one team under her leadership. Alexandra Hayes had proven, beyond any doubt, that true command was measured not by rank or title, but by courage, integrity, and the unwavering commitment to those who rely on you. The ultimate test had been met. The journey of a commander, forged in fire and defined by action, had reached a defining moment. Alexandra Hayes, the Navy SEAL who had once faced mockery, now stood as a leader whose presence commanded respect, whose decisions carried life, and whose courage inspired all who served beside her. And in that quiet moment, as the sun rose over calm waters, she knew that leadership, true leadership, was not about glory or recognition. It was about responsibility, courage, and earning the trust of those you lead. Every single day,